first time. That was actually pretty good timing as far as that intro music goes.
Pretty nice.
We should be live on Facebook, and I think we're live on Twitter as well.
All right.
So great.
Hello.
I'll do a quick little intro, and we'll get right into it.
Let's do it.
So here at Silent Majority Foundation, we're at the headquarters. As some of you who follow us along know, that Pete has taken a new position as the U.S. Attorney. And I don't know if we've made an official announcement, but PJ, his wife, has stepped in to be a director for the foundation. And
Welcome.
So
Thank you.
we're excited to have her. So she's now going to be on our podcast and talking to all of you and giving us updates. So we're glad to have her here. And then we've got another special guest here today. This is his first time on our podcast, but we've had him on a few videos, and he's talked about us quite a bit on his channel. We've got the famous Bill Kirk here from Washington.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you.
Excited to be here.
We've got some
Now that Pete's working for the man.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
He's on the dark side.
He is.
Well, hopefully he's going to do
He's going
some
to
good,
brighten it up over there.
do some good on the
Yeah.
dark side.
Yeah, for sure.
So great. So we're going to have a discussion about constitutional rights. I think is what we decided we were going to talk about. And really, obviously, Bill's our expert on the 2A and what's going on around the world. So we'll talk about that too. But let's kind of get into it. I think PJ had some good questions that she wanted to throw at
She
Bill.
did. She had some doozies earlier, so let's hear these.
Let's see if I can remember
Yeah,
them.
that's right.
So I think the biggest thing, I started kind of with the impetus story of why the constitutional rights and why they've been so important in our family, and Pete's grandfather immigrating over from Spain, his father becoming a cop and a sheriff and everything. And it actually started with us discussing how Pete was raised with the but the believing of guns being there to protect the self, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he also, because they were something that was dangerous and his father was using them quite often, unfortunately, in the area that he was serving.
In the line of duty.
Yeah, in the line of duty,
Right.
literally. Like, so he wasn't just like using them to have them. It was his protective mechanism to ensure that he was going to be home that night with his family. And so his children didn't handle guns that often. However, the importance of them was made very clear. And that is actually why Pete has felt so strongly, and myself as well, with how I was raised in South Carolina with my dad. It was a little bit different. He was a hunter. He's always had the guns. I was raised with them, but it was always not only just for food, but protection of our family, protection of our land, all of that kind of stuff. So a little bit different, but the importance of protecting the 2A rights.
Yeah.
It's not just about 2A. It's not just about the gun.
It's about all of them.
It's about the person. And I love how you brought it up, the humanness.
Yeah, well, so first of all, if you want to just geek out on the constitutional structure of things, it's not random that the right to keep and bear arms was placed as our Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights. And since history now is the test by which we assess the validity of gun laws, what was the historical context of when the Second Amendment was ratified? We weren't too concerned about hunting.
No.
We were concerned about tyrannical governments and personal safety. And so that's the legal answer. But, more of a philosophical, and I think this helps people who may be on the fence about the Second Amendment. Maybe they're ambivalent to it, right? I'm all for the Second Amendment, but, when you get that however, okay? But, and I know Tim Kaine has a real hard time with this. He had a hearing yesterday back in D.C. where he still has this hard time getting his head around that our rights are not given to us by government. Never have been, never will be. Government will never give you a right. Your creator, whoever you believe that to be, is who gave you these rights. These are natural human rights. All the Constitution says is that government can't take them from you. When we get to the right, or the rights that are codified in the Second Amendment, it's not about the right to keep and bear arms, even though that's what's articulated. It's about something far, far bigger than that. It's not even about the right of self-defense. It is about that, but that's a subcomponent. It is about what I think is the most quintessential of human rights, which is the right of self-preservation. Because if you truly do believe in a creator, and even if you don't, there may still be one out there who created you anyway. So whether you believe it or not, it may still actually be reality.
Right.
There is no way that the creator created you with the intent of not allowing you to carve the path that you've chosen for yourself and to preserve that lifestyle.
Right.
There's just no way. He would never create a human being to be enslaved to another,
Exactly.
ever. And the right, what the left would have you believe is that we have a right to protect ourselves from private violence. And private violence is the type of violence we read about in the paper all the time. It's the muggings, it's the sexual assaults, it's the stuff that makes the news. It equally protects us from public violence. And public violence is that which is inflicted upon us by our own government. And it can come in all forms. Go back to the pandemic here in Washington State and the types of violence, economic violence, religious violence, educational violence that was committed by government as well. Take a look at the, remember that great trucker protest up in Canada?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. And then they started taking away all their funds.
Yeah.
Like the banks literally
Yeah,
had
they just
financial
took their money.
violence.
Took their money. Yeah. So what would happen if you had a bunch of truckers in Washington, D.C., and you decided we're going to take all their money? It's going to get a little noisy around Washington, D.C., right? That's the great check and balance that the Second Amendment gives. It's the check on government from the people.
Yeah. And it gives us that right to like you said, it's the self-preservation
The Second Amendment is for everybody.
Yeah.
It's practiced, unfortunately, like people that look like you and me most frequently, right? That's unfortunately the way it is.
Right.
I'm thrilled to see that the largest growing of communities of new gun owners are, women of color, people in the LGBT community. Okay, I know that's a hot issue right now, but last time I checked, their lives are worth preserving just as much as any of our lives. We don't have to agree with lifestyles. We don't have to agree on how we see the world, but we can all agree that every life is worth preserving.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, that's interesting because there's a fine line that goes there, and that could go into a whole nother podcast. But really, when you're looking, I love that everybody is starting to partake in it. I'm a suburban mom, kind of suburban. Are we suburban here in Tri-Cities?
You are totally
I
suburban.
mean, totally suburban.
It's
Okay.
a bedroom community.
This is true. Okay.
Right?
So here I am, I carry
Good.
to, I not often, I need to be much better at it, but that's a comfort thing. But I carry to protect my children because I am in charge of their lives and I am in charge of their protections. At the end of the day, only I, while they are in my presence, can protect them the way that they need to be protected.
That's right. At their age right now, that is correct.
Exactly. I mean, they're young and they don't have that right to bear arms at this moment. And so I'm the one that has to exercise that right of
your job.
protection. It is.
It's your job.
That's what I chose when I decided to have them.
That's right.
And to me, that's the importance of the human right, and that's the importance of the life.
Yep.
Right? And some people will argue about others not having access to guns. We've just had a bunch of stuff happen in the news.
Yes.
It's when you take that right and decide to premeditatively exercise it in the words of preservation because you feel like they're attacking X, Y, and Z, but it's not happening. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. I really need to get my thoughts together on it.
You know the best way you can change the Second Amendment debate in this country forever is arm the women, especially the soccer moms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like what PJ described here, right? Those middle-aged suburban moms driving the kids around from school to soccer practice to dance recitals, all that. They got your most valuable commodity, our nation's most valuable asset, in their possession at all times. And if you arm the women, train the women, okay, so that they were proficient. Number one, you'd see a significant decrease in crime against women, which would be very, very nice.
Right.
But then, 2-3 years down the road, when one of those Gavin Newsom-like politicians are going to be like, well, ladies, so here's the deal. We had something bad happen, so we're going to need to round up and take the guns back. What do you think the reaction is going to be? What would the reaction be? And I don't even think because at that point, I don't think the reaction's political. I don't think the reaction is philosophical.
It's literal.
Biological. It's biological because it's that mama bear, which is genetically programmed into moms. That's what makes them great.
Right.
Right? That's why we all love our moms because we remember just how much they always looked out for us, right?
Right.
And so when you we are going to weaken your ability to protect your cubs, there's a biological reaction to that. And you take a look at who the most vocal people are on the civilian disarmament side. It's not gun control, it's civilian disarmament. Let's call it what it is. It's middle-aged white women. That's you go to these March for Your Lives rallies or any of this stuff, that's what you see. 30 to 50-year-old, predominantly white women who probably got kids somewhere in single digits up to late teens.
Right.
The exact group that should be armed the most.
Yeah.
Right.
And trained the most, right? Because they are dudes like you. There's not a lot of people. You're a big dude, man. There's not a lot of people who are going to just start pitching Rob crap,
Yeah. True.
right?
And when I'm out by myself, I don't worry about it.
You don't?
I don't think about it. I do carry, like PJ says, mostly when it's comfortable. Or, but you better believe when I've got all 6 of my daughters and my wife with me, I know I'm a target,
Yep.
and I'm definitely carrying that.
Yep. Well, because you're responsible for multiple lives at that point, not just your own,
Exactly.
right? And so your risk assessment changes, right? That's the thing about being a parent is that your risk assessment, your tolerance for pain or what you're willing to tolerate, it changes because they become the barometer, not you.
Yep.
So that's why I'm a huge fan, and that's why the organizations out there that are trying to educate women, arm women, make them proficient in firearms, I'm all for it. The more, the merrier.
Absolutely.
I would love. There is a group here in Tri-Cities or in this region, the southwestern or southeastern portion of Washington, that does work with women, and it's specifically a group for women, helping women get comfortable. I just wish. I feel like over the last several years, with the political whatever has been happening, they've not been able to be as present because, again, they're also attacked. Women arming women, it's so sad to hear that people are attacking that when we're supposed to be protecting our children.
Yeah.
So, I would like to
The
see
Second
that
Amendment
more.
community has begun to adjust, and you know this because you've been in the community for a while, that there's a lot of gun stores that women wouldn't even want to go into because they look like 1980s adult bookstores,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the dudes working behind the counter also look like they're 1980s
Like they
adult
should be there,
bookstores,
yeah.
right? Okay, and that's why I really like to see these gun clubs like Security over Woodinville or the Range down in Yakima, these sharpshooting over there in Spokane with these really nice, bright, well-lit, very welcoming environments with females on staff, female trainers. I think we need to create a lot more inviting on-ramps to the Second Amendment for women. I think one of the reasons is it's been a gated community for some reason,
Right?
and it can't be that way because there's no other constitutional right that acts upon like it's a gated community,
Right. No, not at all.
right? Because we don't have this conversation about religion or voting or getting a lawyer or any other being free from cruel and unusual punishment. That's for everybody.
Right.
Right.
So is the Second Amendment. So,
Absolutely.
and again, people of color, their lives matter. Their lives are worth preserving. Candidly, they're in a more targeted group. They should be protecting their lives. Their lives are worth preservation.
100%. Every life.
Every life. That's right.
Yeah. It's interesting when you brought up, what happens when it's time and they come after the moms, they come after the kids. And all I keep hearing is, I don't know if you guys have watched Horton Hears a Who. It's my kids, one of their favorite movies. But the kangaroo who's trying to get rid of the speck, right? Because Horton's listening to the people on the speck and he's trying to save the speck because he's trying to help these people. And the kangaroo's reasoning was that Horton was getting the children to believe in something more. And all she keeps screaming is, what about the children? It's for the children.
Right.
And that's what I hear when people are trying to steal the gun rights. It's like, what about the children? We're going to protect the children. But it's literally the opposite.
It is.
I need it so I can protect my children. So that's
It is. Best way to stop school shootings.
arm the school.
I always said the September 12th model is the best one. You know what the September 12th model is? Because after September 11th, we said we're never going to have another plane hijacked in this country again. And we locked down the airports,
Right.
and we secured a single point of ingress, egress. And hell, we even got TSA that can handle it. And, you see the quality of those people sometimes, and yet they're still doing it, right? Why haven't we secured? And then there's armed guards all over those airports. Why haven't we done the same thing with the schools? Single point of ingress, egress. Armed security. They don't need to be in uniforms walking around with ARs. These are people in plain clothes, well-trained, concealed carrying. They're just like, watchdogs kind of just walking over the school. And then you let everybody know, though, hey, if you come onto this school property with the intent to do harm, we're going to do harm back to you.
Right.
So you want to know
Absolutely.
something interesting? That happened exactly in my school in South Carolina. That's exactly what they did, and they never took those metal doors down. They had we had on-staff security officers at all times. They're actually part of the local police, and they kept everybody in line, and they were at those single point
Yep.
entrance and exit, and it was absolutely. In fact, my school, when they started building it, it was the new school when I started there. It was a long time ago because they actually created it, and the way that they created it and built it was because of Columbine and all of that. And the whole purpose was actually to try to prevent that. But then, so it was already armed, but then September 11th happened. I remember sitting in my calculus class, right? And we're watching it happen, and literally the next day, we had more officers at school. And it stayed that way.
You're seeing some
our
states-
resources doubled, and it was great. And our lockdown procedure changed. Like everything changed the next day, and I never had to worry because I knew teachers were doing their thing. And
Well, you see some states
safe.
now that have actually passed legislation and funded training programs for teachers to go out and get certified so that they can carry on the property.
Right.
You are your own first responder, and typically the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is
A good
a good guy with a gun.
yeah, I had this teacher, Mrs. Sterling, and she always said, "Don't worry, we're far enough from the front door that by the time they get to our door, I'll have that window open. Everybody will be outside." She always told us, and she's like, "And I got you covered." Like she just,
Yeah.
dude, she was awesome.
That's great.
But
I'd
she was
rather
also
I'd
my
rather that
world
by the
history.
time the dude gets 10 feet down the hallway, we're gonna
gonna be
do a
gone.
ballistic gel test on him.
Well, I don't know if the teacher is closer to the door, the main door. I never actually had their classes, so I wouldn't know.
But if you publicized that, I mean, you take a look at, for example, the school shooter in Nashville a couple years ago, who again falls into that demographic group that there's a big discussion about right now. But they had 3 potential targets and chose the Covenant School because they did not have armed security where the other 2 schools did. That's not just luck or bad luck.
Right.
You take a look at what the Crime Prevention Research Center's numbers show. Is that since the advent of gun-free zones, we've had 86% of all mass shootings occur inside a gun-free zone. In the last 10 years, 94% of our mass shootings occur inside of gun-free zones. What is the most common gun-free zone in which shootings occur? Schools.
They have the most people, most kids, most opportunity.
It's most soft targets, right?
And I dropped my 14-year-old daughter off at the high school here, local high school here. And it's funny because I knew we were having this conversation today. So as I was driving away, I started thinking, I don't know what their plan is there.
Yeah.
If they had it again, they have multiple entrances open.
Yeah.
Kids, just watching those kids crawling over the campus as they're coming into school. Like,
Well, what was the first national school shooting to ever gain national attention? Barry Lukaitis in Moses Lake.
yeah, no, I
Way back in the day. I think he did it with a bolt-action hunting rifle or something like that, too.
Yeah, and a shotgun.
And a shotgun, yeah. It wasn't like he walked in there with a handgun and an AR. It was like a couple of hunting weapons. But, yeah, Barry Lukaitis, Moses Lake, Washington, that was a big thing.
Big deal. And to her point about what happened after Columbine, her school, Moses Lake School District, has never been the same.
Yeah.
Everything changed
Yeah.
overnight. Everything changed overnight. There was zero tolerance policies for a lot of things all of a sudden happened. It just changed the community. As small community as it was, it changed.
But if you have a zero
forever.
tolerance policy on gun violence on your campus, then make your campus the point where gun violence can't happen, right? Just putting up a sign saying this is a gun-free zone
Right.
doesn't appear to be working.
Right. No, but I mean, the zero tolerance went down to it wasn't about just no guns allowed. It was zero tolerance for any kind of bullying, any kind of fighting, and it was just like it was locked down.
Yeah.
The typical culture that you had at a schoolyard was gone all of a
They
sudden.
sterilized
It
it.
was completely sterilized. You didn't feel comfortable. You couldn't talk to your friends. I mean, the typical banter back and forth.
So
could
what
be
did it do?
considered
It ended
bullying.
up cheating kids out of a human experience.
Absolutely.
And then we're not talking about the bullying and stuff. That's not. No one should have to go through that experience.
Right.
But the normal human interaction that you have as a teenager, which is an exciting time in your life because you think you're an adult, right? You think you are.
Well, you're playing at it, right?
You're working on it.
You're working on it.
You're working
trying
on
to
it.
figure it out.
But you grow, mentally and physically and socially so much in those few years, the very formative years. I mean, God, can you imagine if we just like took 2 of those years and just made kids stay at home for 2 years? That would be like terrible. Can you imagine if a state did that?
I can't imagine if any state would do that.
Jeez, it would be horrible,
They'd
wouldn't
be failure to launch because they wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
What kind of life experience would they lose?
yeah. No, it's.
So-
I talk to others in the country,
Yeah.
around the country, and they literally don't believe what's happening in Washington State. They're
Yeah.
like, no way, nobody would ever do that. I'm like, dude, we're living this.
Yeah, so when I travel around the country and do a lot of speaking, of course, I always stay inside my lane of the 2A. But when when I'm not in front of the mic and I'm just talking to people on the side, I was like, listen, you don't really know about all the insanity of what it's like to be in a blue state. You guys hear about what they're doing with our gun laws, but you got to see what they're doing with our taxes. You got to see what they're doing with school curriculum. You ought to see what they're doing with boys and girls sports. You ought to see what they're doing with healthcare. You ought to see. I mean, it's living in a blue state is a painful, painful experience. It really is.
Yeah, it's. We left California 10 years ago for Eastern Washington because of what was happening in California, particularly what was happening in the schools and them with their minor doctrine and all of that kind of stuff, and age 12 and being able to do X, Y, and Z, and parents not needing to be notified. And I looked at Pete and I was like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, I can't raise
like,
my
this,
kids in this
can't
environment.
happen.
Right.
Now, what was interestingly enough, the same time that California was doing it blatantly, Washington was doing it covertly
Quietly, yeah.
and very quietly. And what's so interesting now is now that everything's blatant in Washington State, they did such a good job intertwining the last 10 to 15 years
Yep.
of just
Yep. They
creating,
got
and
you.
that's what they do. They play this gotcha game. It's
Yeah.
quiet. It's like the frog in the pot of water.
And then they become very loud and bold about it, and they're like, "No, screw you. This is the way we're going to do it."
Yep.
Yeah. Welcome to Washington. There's other states, Colorado and New Mexico are 2 states that probably ought to pay attention because I follow these states, and there's some that I say are too far gone. They're never coming back. And then there are others, by the way, Washington's one of those now. But then there's a couple states that are teetering, and Colorado and New Mexico are kind of my teetering states right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got to watch themselves real carefully.
It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple election cycles.
You said something to me earlier, though, that it's another subject I think we wanted to talk about, which is a lot of people, when Pete was doing this, and I'm sure Austin, who handles a lot of your Second Amendment cases, everyone assumes that if you're a staunch Second Amendment advocate, you know everything there is to know about every kind of gun that's ever been invented.
Yep. Yeah. There's like so many times people would email in or just talk to Pete and, like break down the different types of guns and the pieces and all the intricacies that come with
Right.
with all of it.
And Pete's eyes are just glazing over.
And you could see
how
him,
well do
like-
you know him?
like
you
not-
know guns pretty well,
I know,
right?
I know guns pretty well. I know guns well enough to know that there are so many different models and makes and,
Yeah.
and variations that there's no way I'm ever going to know them all.
Oh, listen, I do these. I'll do these calls sometimes, and the guy will be like, "Yeah, so I got me a blah 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 blah." Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm like trying to type it in and get an image up online, and it's I don't sell guns so I shoot a lot. I own a lot of guns. I know enough about guns to understand how they operate and things like that. I know Pete's less than that.
Pete's less than that, yeah,
And
yeah.
it sounds like you and Austin, I think, has got a military background.
Yeah, he's military.
So he probably knows them backwards and forwards, particularly the platforms that he's had to use, right? Doesn't even mean that Austin knows every make, model of handgun and rifle out there on the planet. But this is what I think people need to understand, is you don't need to understand guns even at all to defend the Second Amendment.
Yep.
Because like we talked about at the beginning of this, the Second Amendment goes well beyond guns. It's about the right of self-preservation. If you believe that somebody created us and you believe that every human has their own destiny that they get to carve for themselves, that's all you need to be a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. That's it. You do not need to understand now, if you get into what's an assault weapon, what's a magazine, you might want to have a few rudimentary understandings of the operational functions, but beyond that, you don't need to be a gun. And the example I give, and this is people who know me privately, I grew up Catholic, so I had it shoved down my throat as a kid. And Catholicism has a lot of guilt and shame in it. So, as I became emancipated, I kind of drifted away from religion. I don't go to church very often, but I will vehemently defend the right of anybody to go to any church they want on any day of the week under any circumstance they want. And I also believe that churches should be, much like the schools, a safe place where people are allowed to go and worship however they choose to worship in complete peace and sanctity. Okay? And I will vehemently defend the rights to do that.
Well, and the right to do that, like, again, then we talked about that. If we don't protect the right to life preservation,
Yes.
people can't worship the way they want to worship.
Right.
People can't do what they want to do, exercise their free will. If you believe in free will, exercise that free will the way that they want.
That's right.
And that's where Pete comes in, right? Like, yeah, he doesn't have a ton of guns. We have guns at our house, but not a ton of guns.
Right.
Probably shouldn't be saying that. Let's cut that. Anyways, we're live, so it doesn't matter. Right? There we go. There's my light.
Well, the U.S.
bulb.
attorney does not have an arsenal. That's great.
Right,
That's
right.
fine. but listen,
But it's-
whatever you own is your own personal preference.
Right. And
That's it,
and I have enough. I know what I need to do to protect my family. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
And the most important thing, though, is that when Pete decided to take on Second Amendment constitutional fights, it was because that was a right that absolutely has to be protected. It
Well, if
absolutely
the Second
does.
Amendment goes away, how do you preserve the rest of them?
You can't.
Yeah. Well, speech matters and words matter, and those that want to take away our Second Amendment rights like to use words like protect democracy or keep democracy or fight fascism, and it just blows my mind because I think, okay, well, how are you going to protect democracy or fight fascism if you don't have the weapons to do so?
Right.
With words.
Which is the only way to do so. The
Yeah.
only way you fight fascism is with
That's
an
right.
armed populace.
That's the only way it's ever
the
been
only
done
way you
historically.
keep democracy is if you have an armed populace.
That's right. That's exactly right.
No, but we're taught to fight with our words now. And even with their words, they need to be gentle fighting words because that's how our children are being raised. Like, they're literally
Yeah,
being
but
raised
then when we
to-
do that, also, then we equate words to violence. And
And-
that's how we attack free speech then. Words equate to violence. No, it doesn't.
But that's what's happening
No, it
now.
doesn't.
That's literally
Yeah.
what's happening.
Well, there's a big distortion going on amongst the progressives in this country, not only about the meaning of the Second Amendment, but about the meaning of the First Amendment, predominantly when it comes to free speech. And they believe that speech can be censored if it's offensive. Well, here's the thing. We don't need the First Amendment for this conversation right here. There's nothing offensive. I mean, some people might be politically offended, but that's their problem. The First Amendment was always designed to protect speech on the polar ends of the spectrum. Okay, it is the controversial speech.
Right.
Because, sometime in the 1700s, there was a bunch of white dudes sitting around a table one time, and one guy goes, you think having slaves is a good idea? I think it's kind of, maybe we got to think about it, right? And that would have been a radical political idea at the time. Like, what? Well, and eventually it became not only mainstream political thought, it's now ingrained into the moral fabric of our country, right? We fought
Right.
freaking war over it to make
Right.
sure it happened, right? Somebody came up with a wild idea like, well, maybe women should vote. That was a goofy idea when someone brought it up.
Right.
They're not property owners. How can they vote? They don't own property.
So,
like all of the things.
That's why you have to protect fringe speech. Most of it will stay out on the fringe. There's a lot of fringe speech that dominates headlines in this country right now. But some of that fringe speech will actually become mainstream Americana at some point if it's allowed, if we're just allowed to communicate and educate ourselves about it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Humans usually get to the right equation if you give them all the correct information.
They do. They do.
That's why there's one group out there that's trying to cancel speech, trying to censor speech and all that. If you're trying to cancel speech, censor speech, it's because you can't beat the other side on the logic. You never hear anyone in the right talk about, like, the transgender thing that we're talking about with this potential gun ban, which is ridiculous and all that. You never hear anyone on the right say, we got to silence that community.
No.
They can talk keep talking. And I just think that as the facts come out, as common sense is applied to the facts, most humans will get to the right equation.
As long as you can think.
As long as you can think and as long as everyone can effectively communicate their thoughts and ideas.
That's important too.
Right.
Effective communication.
Right.
And being willing to do it instead of allowing anger or impatience to get in the way. I mean, we have to be able to have open conversations about all of it. And if we can't.
Well, you know, one of the things I want to do, PJ, I want to put a plug in for you guys. But I want to do that by talking about the Gators Guns case real quick.
Let's do it.
All right.
Okay.
Because you guys have actually got a little mojo rolling now.
I know, we're excited.
All right. So we'll do like a short Washington gun law video here. But so you guys filed your petition on August 6th.
Correct.
And for those of you who don't know, a petition for certiorari is a fancy way of asking for an invite. Okay, that's what they're doing. They're asking the United States Supreme Court to accept the Gators Guns case, which is a challenge, a once successful challenge to Washington's magazine ban, successful for all of 88 minutes, but it was a glorious 88 minutes when we did it.
Beautiful 88 minutes.
It was awesome.
I felt free.
Yeah, the gun stores, thank you guys for that. So it was set for conference on September 29th, which typically is pretty normal, but the Washington State Attorney General filed what's called a waiver. And the waiver essentially is, well, we just don't really think that we even need to respond to this. So we're not going to respond unless the court actually wants to hear from us. Okay. And you see this frequently. And I saw that get filed and I saw it scheduled for conference. And I told you privately, hey, if it goes to first conference and they haven't told the state, you guys are dead in the water already. They're going to reject this petition.
Right.
And again, it has nothing to do with the integrity of the appeal or the record or anything. This is the way the Supreme Court operates. All right. But then just a few days ago, the Supreme Court sends notice to the Washington State Attorney General's like, no, actually, we'd like you to weigh in on this. And they actually gave him a briefing deadline of October 6th,
Correct.
which means this case is now going to have at least 2 conferences. Because it's obviously going to get rescheduled off the September 29th. There's no way they're going to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down while they're awaiting the state to respond that they ordered them to respond to. But what it means for everyone in this state and actually on a national level, because if Gators Guns were to prevail in front of the United States Supreme Court, it'd be applicable across the country.
Right.
What it means is that this case has actually picked up a little bit of momentum. And there is a higher probability, I'm not going to get into the actual odds, but there is more probability of it potentially being accepted by the Supreme Court today than there was last week.
Right.
We can all agree on that.
Than there
right?
was just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what a lot of people don't know about this is this has been a monumental undertaking for the Silent Majority Foundation.
Yes.
I have spent many, many, many hours on the phone, so I know that these people over here have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours on it. And then we also got to remember that there is an FFL, a guy named Wally Wentz down there in Kelso,
Yes.
who absolutely stuck his neck out to be the tip of this spear. And I was the person that fielded the phone call when Wally got it and got him connected here. And Wally's a very nice gentleman and a true patriot. But you guys, Silent Majority has staked a lot of resources into this case.
Correct.
And Wally has staked his entire life on this thing. Because if he goes down on this thing and they smack him around with the civil fines they could, Wally's out of business the next day.
100%.
And he's got some people down there who have been working for him for like a dozen years. It's just, he's got that good community that he's built down there. So if you guys can give a little or you can give a lot, give to the Silent Majority Foundation. And on their website, they actually have a thing for Second Amendment litigation, which is designed exclusively for Wally and for the Gators Guns case.
Correct.
So listen, get some skin in the game, get in the fight with these people from not only the Silent Majority Foundation, but especially for Wally, because he really, really stuck his neck out on this one. And without guys like Wally Wentz, we wouldn't have plaintiffs. And if we don't have plaintiffs, we don't have lawsuits, and we don't have a chance of ever changing this stuff. So that's my plug. Give. You like that?
Thank you. I like that plug. And I'm going
All
to
right.
add on to that, if that's okay.
Yes.
Is, with all of that and all of the resources, we are right here. And if we don't have the resources to keep fighting for Wally,
Yeah.
then Wally is stuck with it all.
Yeah.
So these donations go directly to us helping to fight for Wally, to keep his livelihood, to keep his business, to keep his everything. And I will, as donor manager, I can tell you that we do accept donor advised funds. We accept, stock if people are looking at things at the end of the year this year and they would like to donate some stock, we do donation of stock options. We have lots of different options. So you can reach out to me.
You guys are flexible.
We are extremely flexible.
Yes, sir.
And when you say that, when you tell us this goes to X, Y, and Z case, it literally in our system goes to
Right.
X, Y, and Z case.
And I know that for a fact because
Yeah.
there are other ways. If other issues that silent majority is involved in, you're more passionate about those. You can earmark those funds for that
Absolutely.
for those projects as well. Yeah.
So thank you for that plug.
Wow.
It's,
You guys earned it.
and
Kudos to Wally too.
right, dude, he is a great guy.
He
God
is a
bless
good dude.
him.
He's a really good guy.
He is a fabulous guy, and we're just really grateful for him.
Yeah, I continue to be impressed with just the gumption and the fortitude that he has to do what he's doing. Because there are a lot of FFLs in Washington. We're in the same position and could have stood up and didn't.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
There's
So-
one in particular that could have stood up and then sort of stood up and then didn't and ended up costing him a lot of money. We can
Right.
talk about the rest of that when we're not recording.
Well, thank you for that plug. I think this has been a great conversation on just the purpose of Second Amendment rights and the purpose of the constitutional rights that we have. And I mean, this could obviously go into many other conversations, and
So
I hope that we're able to do that.
Did field one question.
What's that?
And I think it has to do. It's going to kind of tie into, you've alluded to the transgender
Yeah.
ban. She asks, how do we balance the need for a single reform, maybe removing firearms from mentally ill people, with setting clear parameters that the government can't continue to progress into expanding what they would consider mentally ill simply for not wanting tyranny or gross legislation?
Well, that's the great slippery slope argument, isn't it? Now, the truth is 18 United States Code, Section 922 G4. You guys all knew that one off the top of your head, I'm
100%.
sure. Is the way that we can disarm individuals who've been found mentally defective. Okay, now it requires a court to make a finding of mental defectiveness or a court to order a person into involuntary commitment. We haven't even gotten to the issue of whether transgenderism or gender dysphoria actually constitutes a mental health issue. I have my own strong beliefs on that, but I'm not an MD, so I'm not going to go there, okay? I will point out that there are some countries in Western Europe that have now begun readjusting their models and referring to it as a form of mental health issues, okay? But even if a person suffers from a mental health issue, does that in and of itself make them dangerous to themselves or others? Because that's the standard we use by which to disarm groups. And so we could take a lot of other mental health. Let's just assume, again, for the sake of arguendo, I'm not claiming this is true, but let's just say that gender dysphoria falls into the DSM-5 like other mental health conditions. Okay, let's talk about some other ones. Depression. We all know people who struggle with depression. Some of them might need to be disarmed because they are truly a danger to themselves and others. But does everybody who's been diagnosed as clinically depressed, should they be disarmed? How about anxiety disorders? Everybody. That's the kind of the disorder du jour right now, right? Some people even take medicine for it.
What about the ones that are the temporary ones, like with women, postpartum depression? This is really interesting.
PTSD can be sometimes permanent or temporary. So
Right.
can depression.
Right.
Depression can be transitory in nature depending on things that are going on in your life at the time. Oh, my dad just died. My wife's, kicking me out of the house. Yeah, you might be depressed for a few months, right?
Right.
And it's significant real depression. But it's temporary because, you're going to get your feet back. So do we temporarily disarm them? And then what do we got to prove that they're no longer? And then where do we get with the transgender issue? Are there people in the transgender community that are dangerous? There's no doubt, and there's recent case example. Does that mean everybody in the transgender community is dangerous? I have a hard time seeing how you make that correlation.
Right. I think it's going to be a while before they have the true answer. Like you said, it's a slippery slope.
But here's the thing, and I got a video out on it today because when the rumor popped up yesterday, and again, whether there's truth to this or not, who knows, right? Because it's anonymous DOJ sources, and the two sources I had, one was Breitbart, the other one was Daily Wire. Okay, and Daily Wire has a tendency to, in my opinion, be pretty accurate about things. Okay, but there was this huge woo out of the 2A community. And then there was this no out of progressives. And so you see this great examples of political hypocrisy from both sides. Because, as Second Amendment people, have we ever found a societal problem involving violence where we believe that the solution was disarmament?
No.
So why would it be any different here? right? And then to the other side of the people who are saying, no, 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 anytime politicians are talking about disarming guys like us, people like us, I should say, well, they're all in favor of it. So it exposed a lot of hypocrisy on both sides. But the lesson I want everyone out there listening to think about is if you let that horse out of the barn here on this one, when you ever getting it back? And I'll give you another example of letting horses out of the barn. You go back to the first Trump presidency. We had this thing with the bump stock shooting down there in Vegas. They wanted to ban bump stocks. Congress probably could have done it. But instead, Trump says, no, ATF, you go write yourself a new rule, and we'll just do it through rulemaking. First time it was ever done in the history of the United States by a Republican president. Okay? How many times did Joe Biden use that playbook when he got into the White House? It was 5 times.
Many times you could.
5 times in 4 years.
Yep.
All right. So you let this horse out of the barn and you got a President Gavin Newsom down the road somewhere. How about if he just goes, I find that all white Christian males pose a threat? Doesn't really need the evidence or any correlation. He's just, that's what we're going to label this time. And now all of a sudden they're subject to disarmament, or anyone who's taking mental health medications of any sort, and consider the people in Washington State that waive their medical privileges when they get a concealed carry license. So theoretically, that information is available to the state.
Yeah.
That is the incredibly slippery slope that we cannot even begin to go over. And I'm not saying that there's not an issue. There is something going on with these people. There is far too many recently that have involved people of trans people being involved in shootings. It definitely is an issue that needs to be addressed. But disarming an entire community based upon their sexual identity, I do not believe is a constitutional nor practical solution.
So it's interesting. So we have the shirts that say like facts over feelings, and we really believe in that. Like, we're having an emotional response, and once you have an emotional response like that and try to take such a big action, to me, this is an emotional response.
Yeah.
And
This is
where
like
you
an
see the
assault weapon ban.
hypocrisy.
This is like an
Exactly.
assault weapon ban because one nut job did one bad thing one day to some people.
Right.
And now we just got to take the guns from everyone. So again, and listen, if you want to go back and look at who's the most common demographic group of mass shooters in America, it's white males, right?
Yeah. Well, so far.
Now, if you want to include real mass shootings, include all your gun violence that you see in Chicago and things such as that, which apparently doesn't really get included in that.
That doesn't exist.
But then there's another demographic group also that would be responsible for a lot of shootings. So if you really consider what white males and probably young African-American inner city males are capable of doing in a year from shooting standpoint, it probably makes what the trans community does pretty pale in comparison, right? So we're going to start disarming those groups too, and that's the thing. And that was the last chapter of the video I did, which the chapter was called "Consider This," and the "Consider This" is consider the shoes on the other foot. How's it work for you now?
Right.
And that's to be mindful in anything. You've always got to hit the brakes for a second and consider this. Is it gonna come back and haunt you on the other side? Because if it is, then it's a bad idea.
Absolutely.
I think it's a bad idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The one last thing I wanted to pick your brain on a little bit is our foundation was started because we as citizens saw a need for people to stand up and fight for our rights. We left it to organizations or the government to do the right thing, and we saw what happened during COVID. And we are all constantly encouraging our followers or our supporters to stand up where they're at. Now you've kind of created your own niche of standing up for a specific right. What was your impetus for that? Why was that so important to you? And how would you encourage other people to do the same thing?
Yeah. Well, so my family goes all the way back to the state. We got here in 1883. Okay, so Scottish. You heard the story down in Wapato.
Oh, yeah.
And so William Halliday Kirk Sr.'s, they put him in the ground in 1912 out in Elmira, where the Kirk homestead is. So people need to understand that every Kirk that's ever lived in the United States is all buried in this state, every single one of them. So when people say, why are you still here? My answer is, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to go? This is my state. I used to think that Washington State was absolutely one of the greatest places to live, even though it was always a little quirky liberal, but it was just a little quirky liberal. It's kind of that hippie liberal,
Right.
you know? And there's that sign outside of Aberdeen that says, "Come as you are,"
Yeah.
right? Which is just a line from a Nirvana song. But that was where Washington was. You could really come up here and you could be whoever you wanted. So if you wanted to be a blue-haired nose ring, they, them, or you wanted to be a big LDS family or anywhere in between, you could do it.
Right.
You could do it, right? And for whatever reason, in the last 20 years, we've gone from quirky liberalism to extreme progressivism. And the problem with extreme progressivism is that if you don't look a certain way, act a certain way, vote a certain way, and talk a certain way, they will make you not welcome anymore. And a lot of people, it's been easy for them to go, well, I moved here 10 years ago, screw it, I'm just going to move to Idaho. But what about people like me? What about people like me? The Second Amendment just happened to be something that I was passionate about, and as a criminal defense attorney, it allowed me to find a channel, and it's a whole separate story about how that channel even came to be. But, thanks to the Summer of Love and all of that in Seattle, that helped really was the catalyst for the channel starting. But what I would say to anybody who is like, I'm not leaving or I can't leave, because there's a lot of people like that.
A lot of us wear
A
them.
lot of there, okay? So this is my advice, is that's fine. But if you're going to stay here, then dig your freaking heels in and fight. Okay? Because they're planning and they're begging for you just to bend over and take it. And there's a lot of people in this state have been bending over and taking it for a long time. And I ended my speech in Wapato with this, and I will end it with here, is that I would rather stay, if you're going to stay here, I'd rather see you die on your feet than live on your knees. So whatever that issue is, whether it's Second Amendment, whether it's some of the stuff that's going on with our public school curriculum, whether it's what they're doing with our taxation, our transportation issues, there's enough issues out there, and everyone is going to be passionate about one of them. And maybe you're not a true conservative, you don't vote Republican, but there is a hot button issue that maybe is a conservative, more like issue, and you could attach yourself to that. And that in your own little way, if you fight on that, you can make that little part of Washington better. Well, then do it, right? It takes all of us, because they in Olympia are betting on the fact that we're just going to shut up and take it. Mm-hmm. And the days of that is over with. We can't do it anymore.
Agreed. Amen. Can I say amen to that?
You can.
I wanted to when we were at that event and you closed with that. I just wanted to stand up and be like,
I would have. Yeah, I appreciate it.
You probably would have appreciated it if I would have jumped up.
Everyone else was about 3 bourbons into it
I
already.
know,
right? So, yeah, that was great.
And
whatever.
this would have been the sober girl screaming, yeah, in the back.
By the way, she won the constitutional trivia contest that night, didn't she?
Yeah. Well, I had to get some help from my lifelines.
Yeah, but they had lifelines available.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was good. I'm just glad the one you asked me, I happen to know.
It was fun. It was
10th Amendment.
It was great. And in fact, I want to put in a plug for them. It's a group called
Scholars
of American Liberty.
Liberty.
And right now they are based out of Yakima, and it's a fabulous concept. And I love what they're doing. And what they do is they are teaching the Constitution to our children. And it is a class for high schoolers. And it is on the high schoolers' own time, not during school time, but on their own time. And it's one Saturday every month for 9 months in a row. And it's for 4 hours in that time. And when these kids take this class, and if they get everything
and pass the final,
so they actually have a final at the end of all of this, they then get a $2,000 scholarship to their school of choice for college.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this is we obviously know that the Constitution is not being taught in school. This is absolutely something that our children need to know, especially as they become of voting age. They need to understand why they have this right to vote. They need to understand what they're voting on, and they need to understand what it is that they're hearing and how it goes against or with what they're learning about the Constitution. And I really wish that this was available to our schools down here. I would actually send my kids up to Yakima.
Yeah, I'd like to see this thing grow to a national level.
Yes,
And right now,
and
there's
they
a
need
bunch
donors.
of young 20-something-year-olds that are gravitating a little bit more towards conservative ideals. So there's a real market for this. And,
Right.
and in the Washington School District's not alone in failing to teach our kids about our constitutional form of government and how government works. And
Right.
the most important thing you can teach kids is how government doesn't work. I think there's a lot of unrealistic expectations about what government is actually supposed to be able to do for us.
Or what, yeah. I mean, I've heard so many kids say, well, the government will take care of me. The government does that, or the government will pay for it. I'm like, who do you think? The government doesn't make money. They don't produce anything.
Never have, never
No,
will.
you are paying for that, or somebody else is paying for that. Like it's a whole. the
Yeah,
whole
they
thing.
spend money and they take money.
Yes.
That's what government does.
So
I mean, that's the
scholars-
business model.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Scholars
of American Liberty, Soul. Yeah, check them out. They are a very worthwhile charity.
100%. It and salt of the earth people. Let's talk
Yeah,
about
really
you
good
know who
people,
started-
really
just
good
great
people.
people.
Yeah, it was
So
good. Good
so
times.
yeah, it was good times.
Cool. Well, Bill, thanks for joining
Thanks
us.
for having me.
This has been great. Hopefully, we get you back soon. We can
Anytime.
talk some more as Gators progresses. I think that.
Yeah, it's going to be
good.
interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think that things can go any direction at this point in this state.
You got
and
that
this
Duncan
country.
case that just slid in also, and that's
Right.
kind of the granddaddy of them all when it comes to that. But hey, we'll take a review of Duncan.
Right.
It would apply to us here too. So we just need to get the Supreme Court to end this misery once and for all. Let's get this over with.
Right.
Make it clear. I think
Yeah.
if anything, Bruin was great, except that it just made the waters more muddy.
Well, Bruin was good up until Rahimi came out. Then then Roberts basically just underwrote Bruin. So now there's enough wiggle room. We got to tighten it back up again.
Absolutely.
Always that wiggle room.
Yep. Thanks, guys. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
Thank you.